Hello and a very good afternoon to everyone present here. I'm your host Khushi and I welcome you all to today's TechGig webinar on Gen AI is everywhere except the PNL. It's an absolute pleasure to have all of you join us today. To facilitate this session, folks, please join me in welcoming our distinguished speaker for today's session, Mr. Jayachandran Ramachandran, Senior Vice President, Artificial Intelligence Labs at C5i. Jay brings with him over 28 years of leadership experience in AI, analytics, and innovation. At C5i, he leads applied AI research, product innovation, and the responsible adoption of AI to address complex business challenges. His journey spans industries like retail, pharma, financial services, telecom, and manufacturing, with leadership roles at Infosys, IBM, HCL Technologies, Virtusa, Covensys, and Maruti Udyog. A design thinker, inventor, and industry thought leader, he holds multiple AI related patents and has been a regular contributor to leading platforms such as 3AI, DataQuest, and ODSC. Recognized by NASCOM for his contributions to advancing AI learning, he is also a member of 3AI's Thought Leaders Circle. He earned his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Anna University. It's such a pleasure having you, Jay, here with me today.
Thank you, Kushi. I extend a warm welcome to all of you who have joined. So we're going to have a very exciting session out here.
Yes.
And the topic, as you see, is like very, very contemporary because we're all working on GenAI, agentic AI, large language models and everything. And one of the key expectations we always expect is a lot of solutions and other stuff gets implemented. But is it actually really giving us the return of investment? So that is going to be like the key focus for us in this particular topic.
Yes. So now about this session, I would like to take the audience through it. That as you know, that generative AI is everywhere, from powering creativity to boosting productivity and also sparking innovation across industries. Yet when it comes to measurable business impact, its reflection on the PNL often remains missing. So why does this gap between experimentation and enterprise scale outcomes exist? And more importantly, how can organizations close it? That's the central question we will be unpacking in this discussion. Throughout this session, we will cover three key dimensions. First, we will look at why Gen AI experiments often struggle to translate into measurable business outcomes. And then we'll explore practical strategies to align Gen AI initiatives with enterprise goals, profitability, and scale. And finally, we'll discuss the road ahead, building sustainable, responsible, and ROI-driven Gen AI adoption across industries. This conversation is particularly valuable for business leaders seeking ROI, developers aiming to scale responsibly, and architects or security professionals navigating Gen AI's integration into enterprise systems. So together, we'll be exploring how organizations can move beyond pilots and proofs of concept to unlock sustainable growth and real business value. I would like to notify that the session is scheduled for an hour. We'll hear valuable insights from Jay, and in the final 15 minutes, we'll open the floor for an interactive question and answer round. So everyone, please feel free to share your questions anytime in the Q&A window. So with that, let's get started. And now I'd request Jay you to take it forward.
Yep, thank you, Kushi. So as Kushi already gave a very good introduction and a context, so let's get started. So first and foremost, let's demystify this topic itself, right? What is Gen AI is everywhere and except the P&L. What does it actually mean? So if you look at it across any enterprise you take, be it a startup organization or a large enterprise or a small medium business, or the tech change, right? Across these companies, what we will see is Gen AI is actually kind of applied across these 6 dimensions. First and foremost, if you look at it from a strategy point of view, every organization would like to kind of embrace AI, generative AI, agentic AI, and anything else which is going to come in the future as well. So everyone wants to have a strategy. Some of them already have a strategy. Some of them have started execution on that strategy. Some of them actually deployed those strategic objectives and other stuff. So that's actually an ongoing process. So strategy means like right from the top, everyone is involved. That means like the leadership team plus the next level, middle management, everyone is involved in terms of identifying like what an organization should do with AI, what are the kind of business functions in which actually they wanted to implement. All of those are actually part of that particular strategy. And then actually comes your structure. So there is an organizational structure actually defined, and you would have seen like as chief analytics officer or chief AI officer or chief GenAI officer. So multiple roles are actually being kind of brought up in the market today, and there is a team actually available under those leaders, and they are actually executing on these different programs. And then comes like your technology, which is like, I mean, the what we are currently going through, the whole technology transformation, right from the days like ChatGPT came into existence, and then the different large language models and the agentic AI technologies, all those stuff. So everybody is kind of adopting those technologies. Then you have like these technologies get embedded in all your product solution or service offering, whatever actually you're providing. So that's kind of a the way actually you take whatever you have in the organization to the market to your clients, and then basically you want to win the market share, win our competition, and definitely like that result, that should basically result in your business metrics, right? And then every process within the organization, be it like let's say an HR process or a finance process or a supply chain process, everywhere actually we wanted to kind of reimagine this process or basically bring in some level of Gen AI or agentic AI, any of those technologies into those process. How do we kind of improve those process? How do we make them efficient? How does it actually really translate into something more efficient and better? And of course, without people, actually, you cannot do all this stuff. So many of the organizations have started actually training their entire employee base on these different Gen AI skills, so that actually people are able to embrace these technologies and adopt and everything. So this is what actually what we mean by Gen AI is everywhere. That means like Gen AI is everywhere across the organization, across any of these dimensions you take. There is a part of Gen AI or agentic AI, which is kind of part of this organization, right? So what it actually should result in, like end of the day, this whole transformation is all about like how do we actually bring in an impact to the profit and loss of the company, right? So basically, like what are those top line metrics, which is the revenue or the sales? How do you really make that needle move? That's actually the most important goal. It doesn't matter like what technology you use or how much of this technology you use, whether you're using latest or the older one. End of the day, it should actually really result in those metrics, right? The P&L metrics and the profitability metrics around gross profit, operating profit, net profit, and all those stuff. Now, of course, it should actually finally result in these derived metrics like the EBITDA and earnings per share and other stuff. Because only if we are able to create this impact, then actually there is going to be a lot of interest when it comes to these not new technologies. If you're not able to do this outcome or create this outcome, then actually it is going to be a real challenge, right? So that's actually we kind of try to demystify this particular topic, and let's see like how the whole market is actually at this point in time. It's very important like we do justice to this particular statement saying that Gen AI is everywhere except the P&L. We should justify that statement first, and then we'll get further deep dive on that. So let's look at like some of those leading companies like the tech giants. How are they actually performing in the market? If you look at like a company like Google and its parent Alphabet, they have been like growing pretty impressive, right? I mean, for example, the Q2 2025 results, their revenue actually increased by around 14%, and it reached around 96.4 billion. That's pretty impressive, and it is actually firing on all cylinders when it comes to like their different offerings, be it the search, the YouTube, their Google subscriptions, platforms, devices, everywhere actually they are seeing a growth, including their services business, which is also increasing by 12% to $82.5 billion, right? So pretty impressive show. And the real call out here is like the Google Cloud revenue, which is actually increased by 32% to 13.6 billion, right? And what this actually means is like many of their Google Cloud products, right, and especially the ones we as practitioners use from a AI Gen AI perspective, be it like the Google, the Cloud Vertex Studio, and then along with it, like whatever the agentic frameworks available, like the Google SDK, the ADK, the Agent Development Kit, and then like the other there, AlloyDB, and then the basically like you have the big query and other stuff, right? So multiple products are there from GCP, plus including like their solutions which actually they offer in the form of like their office products and everything. So basically what they are actually doing is like, one, there are like a lot of services which actually the IT companies or the service providers actually can consume, or it is embedded into some of their products from a B2C perspective. So pretty much a very impressive show. So they are actually seeing a 32% increase, and it became like 13.6. So that's a very good data point to see like whether a company like Google, how well actually GenAI is actually helping them to create the P&L impact, right? So let's look at like another company. In this case, actually, let's look at like Microsoft. Here again, like we can see a similar kind of pattern. The revenue has actually increased to 76.4 billion, and that is actually an 18% increase. Similarly, you can see on the operating income as well. This is very important. It's not only revenue, but operating income or the operating profit and all those dimension also has to increase. So that's what actually we are seeing over here, 34.3 billion, and it increased 23%, right? And as per like the statement of the CEO, what we are seeing is like the cloud and AI is like the driving force. So they are actually seeing a significant impact on their business because of these cloud and AI services. And you can see like these numbers like 34% increase and all those stuff all the way. The Azure cloud revenue is reaching 75 billion. And then the ones actually predominantly folks on this call who might be consuming is like their intelligent cloud and the associated services, right? All those Azure services, search, and then the any of these LLMs or any of their open source models like 5, 3, 4, and all those stuff. So pretty much like any of these products plus the Copilot and other products also people consume. So including all this stuff, they're actually seeing like current around 27% increase actually they are seeing. So pretty much if you look at it like from a Google and a Microsoft and maybe AWS and any of those companies, the big tech giants, they are doing exceptionally well, and especially their AI products and services are also pretty good. So that means like the statement GenAI is everywhere except the P&L may not hold good for these companies because they are seeing like very interesting kind of a improvement when it comes to this whole the adoption of GenAI into their products and services, and how they actually able to sell it to the market. And people like us, because I work in a pure play analytics and services company, so we consume a lot of services and platform solutions from Google's and the Microsofts of the world. That means like I am a customer of these services, and because I'm a customer, they are able to get both revenue and profitability from me as well as like people on this call as well, right? So we are seeing as impact over here. Let's see like the other dimension. So before we go, let's do a poll. So Kushi, just do a poll one.
Yes, sure. So all the attendees are requested to please let us know your views on this. We'll be having the poll on for a minute. And the question is that what is the top most strategic priority for major tech giants, example, Google, Microsoft, and Meta? And the options are allocate capital for AI infra, data center GPUs, or electric power, focus on productivity improvement or cost savings, enable GenAI or agentic AI adoption across enterprise clients, and embed GenAI or agentic AI into their own projects or platforms or services. So you can let us know your views.
So, Kushi, while they are doing the poll, should I unshare to see the results?
No, we'll be able to see them.
Okay.
We can close the poll now. I hope everyone has voted. So we are here with the results. You can have a look at it.
Okay, I think I need to unshare to see it, I think. Okay, so now I see the results. 18% are saying allocate capital for AI infra, data center, GPU, electric power, etc. focus on productivity improvement and cost savings, enable GenAI adoption across enterprise on 24.6%, embed GenAI and agentic AI into their own products and services, 30.77%. That's impressive, right? I mean, they are actually, of course, doing as per this poll, because we see a lot of their products and services being embedded with like all LLMs and other stuff. And they are, of course, enabling the enterprises to adopt, maybe not to the extent. We'll see that as we progress. Productivity improvement, and yeah, they are actually applying, for example, things like GitHub Copilot and other kind of solutions into their process, and then helping them to do things faster and better. And this is actually a very important focus area, allocating capital for AI infra, the data center, GPU, electric, or other stuff. So we'll see this as we move forward. So let me just share it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So screen is visible, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Complete.
So let's look at like what kind of volatility actually we are seeing in the tech industry at this point in time, right? So as per the Microsoft CEO Satya, AI now writes around 20 to 30% of Microsoft's code. So being a large product organization, we can understand like the kind of complexity which is there in their environment. And they are actually claiming like 20 to 30% of the code is written by AI, and that's probably helping them release products faster to the market. At the same time, they're able to kind of reduce their team size as well, which is actually reflecting in the form of like some restructuring and other stuff happening across the organization. And the company is actually reallocating some of those savings as well as like additional capital to fund their 80 billion AI infrastructure, which actually they wanted to build during this year. So across the board, actually, we are seeing like multiple organizations. We are seeing like many layoffs and other stuff happening. It is claimed saying that AI is basically leading to all this stuff. They are applying AI, and that is actually helping them improve the efficiency, deprioritize some of those maybe legacy initiatives they may be running. Because today, actually, we are moving to more of a AI kind of or AI first mindset when it comes to any new project or any new strategy or anything. So that means like they are doing a lot of reprioritization at their end. Some experts actually argue saying that this could be due to maybe in the kind of expectation of like they would be able to sell more AI services and more AI solutions to the market, and market would be able to embrace that. But maybe like that's not the reality, and because of that, they're actually feeling like okay, they have some excess people, and because of that, actually they are releasing. That's like one perspective experts are saying. What others are also saying is like they actually want to relook at their people profile in terms of like reducing the cost profile of those existing people. They want to look at like how they actually move to some low cost location, as well as like where skill is also available, something like a country like India, right? So that's like another kind of perspective the experts are actually putting forward. The another dimension people are actually saying is like the current maturity of the large language models and other stuff. We know like we have a lot of issues with it in the form of not getting the reliable results, not getting the right level of accuracy, not getting the real the reasoning capabilities and other stuff. That means like there is still a long way to go before actually that whole intelligence becomes like maybe much better than human being and much more accurate than human being, so that actually people can trust those results and other stuff. That means like these organizations definitely need to invest in like what we call as like the manufacturing intelligence. That means like creating bigger and faster and better models. That's actually one of their key objectives. That means like they need to invest in the AI infra. We'll see that why it actually is so. And of course, like some of you in the poll also actually mentioned, people are actually looking at like bringing efficiency, and then they want to optimize on the cost and boost margins. Then the last one is like the reason is like the whole technology shift which is actually happening. So many of those maybe SaaS products and other stuff, people wanted to actually make it AI driven, and some of the investments they actually wanted to do in some of the legacy products and platforms that is no longer relevant. That means like we need to move to the new space. That means like some of those skills may be not required going forward, and these are the reasons like we are seeing a lot of volatility in terms of people getting laid off. At the same time, we see like billions of dollars being invested when it comes to building the AI infra, as well as like building new models and other stuff, right? So pretty much like a lot of conclusions can be made, but we cannot attribute like one single reason. This is the exact reason. Maybe a combination of factors are actually acting together, and then depending on like where we are and what kind of industry actually we analyze, some of this may be very relevant in such scenarios. So let's look at like the interesting aspect, right? I mean, the compute versus intelligence. This is like a very, very interesting dimension actually to look at it. So Sam Altman says the intelligence of an AI model roughly equals the log or the logarithm of the resources used to train and run it. So very, very interesting perspective. So right from the days we have actually seen the GPT 1, 2, 3, and the series actually came along. One of the thing actually we kind of seen is like the number of parameters actually keep increasing from one model version to the next model version, and that effectively means like they have put more GPUs to kind of train the model, more tokens actually included in the training process, and end of the day you get a better model with large number of parameters, billions, trillions. That's the kind of number actually we are looking at this point in time. That effectively means like, I mean, if you need to train a really large model, you actually need to put a lot of resources to get to the next level of intelligence, right? So, but at the same time, if you keep putting more and more resources at it, it's not like linearly the intelligence actually increases. It doesn't do that way. So it's like a logarithmic increase. That means like what Satya says is like if intelligence is log of compute, whoever can do lots of compute is a big winner. So that is like a very, very important thing to actually look at it, right? Because if it is going to be a log of compute, whoever can actually bring in more GPUs into the data center, they are going to be the winner. So that is the reason actually you would be seeing a lot of partnerships being kind of stitched these days. Microsoft with OpenAI and Oracle with OpenAI, Nvidia with OpenAI, similar to that, Amazon with Anthropic, and right. I mean, many partnerships are actually getting done these days. And if you can see this particular graph, this is the reason like what it actually means, right? So in the x-axis, you can actually see the compute in teraflops, right? This is like the number of operations actually you can do, all those matrix multiplications and other stuff which actually you do when it comes to the both training as well as like the inference process. And this is like, I mean, you can consider this as intelligence, right? I mean, there is no, we can't put like intelligence is 100 or 50 or anything. It's like a continuously kind of evolving kind of an index actually you can see, right? So you here actually you can see like, I mean, you can observe that up to a particular point you put like more teraflops, there is a substantial increase. But to get to the next level, for example, someone wants to move from a index of, let's say, intelligence index of 8 to all the way up to, let's say, something like a 10, you can imagine like the multiplication factor which is actually required from a compute perspective. So that means like whoever actually can bring in more compute is going to be the winner in this particular market, given whatever kind of architecture actually we are seeing today, the whole transformer and self-attention and all those kind of architecture we have seen, right? In that kind of a framework, this is what actually it holds good. Tomorrow, somebody can come with like a completely different architecture and completely kind of throw this off. But at this point in time, everyone kind of argues that the intelligence of an AI model is roughly going to be equal to the log of the resources, which effectively means that all these companies are going to kind of some way prioritize their investment, right? In terms of where actually they want to focus on. Because if people are going to focus on something else and put less money on the AI infra, that means like they are going to be lagging behind. So a lot of investment is going to come to the AI infra reasons. This is where actually you can see OpenAI and NVIDIA did a partnership. And today, actually, we are no longer talking in terms of GPUs, number of GPUs and the stuff. People are actually talking about, let's say, 10 gigawatts of NVIDIA systems, right? So power is actually going to be a very significant factor, because these data centers are going to be like size of multiple football fields, right? That's the kind of size actually we are talking about, and it needs enormous amount of power. So ensuring like those power or electricity partnerships are there, and then the GPU partnerships are there. All those stuff are actually important when it comes to training these models and getting everything done. So effectively, it means the investment priority is like more tilted towards like computer resources or compute resources, and that actually is going to lead to what we call as like manufacturing intelligence, because end of the day, with all this process we are trying to manufacture whatever the intelligence actually we are talking about. So now let's look at like we have seen like the big tech, what they're actually doing, what how they actually perform, what are their revenue numbers. They seem to be doing pretty good. They're actually investing a lot with a lot of VC money as well as like their own money into the AI research, as well as like development of new models and other platforms and services and everything. So end of the day, like I mean, a lot of people are actually consuming this. So what are they actually talking about, right? I mean, you would have heard about this particular report from MIT, the State of AI in Business 2025 report, and very interesting findings from this particular report. If you see over here, they're saying like 30 to 40 billion in enterprise investment has gone into GenAI. So this means like a lot of platforms gets built, a lot of solutions gets launched, a lot of APIs and other stuff are actually made available. A lot of GPUs are available for people to train and all those stuff. So all this stuff actually is coming to 30 to 40 billion of enterprise investment, right? It is available. And unfortunately, what people are actually saying is like 95% of organizations, like large enterprise or medium enterprise, who are actually consumers of these AI platforms and services and everything, they don't see any return from their investments. That's a sad story. I mean, ideally, if this number would have been, let's say, some 30-40%, it would have been like pretty good. But the scenario is like very, very different, and only 5% of these integrated pilots. So I have just underlined this word integrated pilots, because end of the day, if you're doing a proof of concept or an MVP and it doesn't get embedded into any of this existing process, then that means like there is a big failure out there, right? You're not able to move the needle. People, your users are not actually able to use it because they currently follow a business process, and the LLM solution, whatever we have built, is not embedded into it, and it is not giving results. We don't like what is the reason for this 95% not getting returned, but 5% are able to get returned because they are able to think differently. They kind of see like when they create a or select a use case, they understand like where this use case will fit in, what are those kind of KPIs which are going to be impacted, how are they going to measure it, how are they going to roll out this particular solution, right? They are kind of looking at it from an end-to-end perspective. That is actually very important, and they're actually seeing the results and extracting millions in value. So let's look at like some of the other findings. A lot of companies are actually using tools like chat gpt and copilot and this from different kind of organizations. 80% of actually have explored and piloted them. 40% have reported deployment. But what actually the all these chat gpts and the enterprise chat gpt and the copilot and others, it actually helps you to improve, let's say, individual productivity, and it's not able to really move the P&L, right? I mean, you really don't know whether it actually helps in getting the revenue or reduce the cost and other stuff. It's like very, very confusing or not well documented. And because of that, we're not able to see the benefits. When we look at like the kind of platform solutions or systems which are of enterprise grade, and maybe many service providers or startups or SaaS platforms will be providing this, but many organizations are actually evaluating. For example, 60% of organizations evaluated such tools, but only 20% reach the pilot stage, and just 5% actually reach the production. So this is actually again not a great story, and something needs to be done to basically move it, right? That's important. And why do they actually fail? They say like most projects fail due to very brittle workflows. That means like they are not able to define proper workflows where AI gets embedded and it's able to work very interactively with the existing process, and it actually lacks contextual learning. It doesn't know the domain where it actually need to operate in, and doesn't align with the day-to-day operations of the user. So these are like primary reasons which has been attributed to. So if we need to really make or change things, we need to address some of these aspects which actually have been highlighted over here. Let's look at like another report. This is also kind of similar kind of pattern. Here again, like the people who are actually surveyed are enterprise clients, and we see like AI agents. The expectation is like it could generate 450 billion in economic value, either through revenue uplift or through cost savings. Any of this could be adding 450 billion by 2028. And if you see this particular number, 14% organizations are implemented AI agents, partially implemented is 12%, and full scale is just 2%. This actually kind of corroborates with the previous report as well. There it actually, they said like 5% are able to kind of get benefits. Here maybe, I mean, if you take a kind of an average or something, it could be like 5 to 7% kind of number, right? So very much corroborates with the previous report. Then here again, same story. You can see like 23% have launched pilot, 61% are actually preparing for or exploring deployment. So very less number of people actually have really gone to production. That's what this particular report says. And when it comes to like the level of automation, actually we want to see from an agentic AI perspective, as per them, like in the coming 12 months as well, only 15% of business processes expected to operate at level 3 or semi-autonomous. That effectively means that you're never going to see a kind of a system where an agent kind of does everything end to end, and there is no requirement for a human being in that particular process itself. That is like very unlikely scenario. So we are going to see predominantly like things at a level 3 kind of a maturity. And this is expected to grow to maybe a 25% by 2028, maybe 3 years from now, right? One of the critical things actually to look at here is like the trust in AI agents is actually declining, right? Only 27% of organizations express trust in fully autonomous AI agents. Earlier it was 43%. That effectively means when a technology got launched, there was like a lot of hype and excitement, and people started trying out proof of concept, trying out pilot and other stuff. However, like when they actually really saw it in action, some of the important thing which is actually required is like the trust, right? I mean, it should give like very, very highly reliable and accurate results. It should give, however, we're not seeing that because of the trust is actually declining. So this is like an important thing, like whoever is working on the agentic solution or GenAI solution, an important factor is to how do we build in trust into what are actually we build. So that's another important thing to look at. So as per this particular report, we need to be like very clear in terms of what kind of areas actually we select, which use cases we select in what areas. They recommend like in customer service, IT, sales, and others are very interesting areas for applying this particular new technology. So an interesting perspective. So MIT report as well as like Capgemini report, there's like a very interesting correlation, and we don't see like much of difference out here. Another report like from Google, so this is like from the tech giant. So here we are seeing a different kind of number here. When it comes to the return of investment in AI in 2025, they are saying like AI agents are actually being deployed at scale. So you can see these numbers. 52% executives who organization use GenAI also have adopted AI agents in production. So they say like it is adopted in production, but if you look at like the subsequent numbers, like whether agentic AI is like adopted and how much of improvement they are actually getting, in most of the cases across these numbers, you can see like this particular disclaimer kind of stuff. They see an ROI on at least one GenAI use case. So everywhere we see at least one. That effectively means like it's not like people will only do one use case. They may be trying out multiple use case, and people are actually saying like they are kind of getting an ROI in maybe one or two, and the number is like very low. And some of the challenges they have actually identified is like primarily around data privacy and security. So even though these numbers actually look higher, but I could actually relate to the Capgemini as well as like the MIT report, because it clearly says like one GenAI use case. if you're trying out, let's say 20 use case and then only one is giving ROI, which effectively means like 5% is only giving the ROI, right? I mean, maybe an exaggeration, but we can kind of conclude like that. In a large enterprise, it is very unlikely that do only one GenAI use case, right? Multiple would be attempted. So this report also kind of aligns, and the challenges actually we see people are having brittle workflows. They are not getting it the contextual. They're not making it contextual. They're not able to embed into end-to-end operations. They're not able to get trust into the overall solution. Data security and privacy are all those challenges. So these reports kind of give us like some perspective into like what are those reasons why Gen A is everywhere except the P&L, right? The ROI is not there. So these are like many reasons which are actually available from these reports. And let's look at like how do we kind of attempt to solve these things. Before we go there, this is like another interesting finding from let's say the Deutsche Bank as well as like the Bain and Company, and we'll see like whether this corroborates with those earlier findings from these different reports. So here again, actually we can see everyone is saying like the AI investment is kind of the investment required is going to be something like a parabolic. That effectively means like in a parabolic equation, you really need to kind of have an investment which is actually much higher than the previous year. That's how a parabola gets built, right? It will be higher. So it's a quadratic kind of equation, right? So that means like you really need to invest more than the previous year, and that is not going to be sustainable unless it is actually backed up by real revenue or cost savings which actually you get from this particular investment. And this kind of the chart over here kind of shows that if you see the GDP, right? I mean, for example, if AI is actually resulting in a lot of revenue as well as cost savings and other stuff, ideally, like we should have seen a lot of increase from a overall the GDP perspective. So this is like an US economy and how the GDP is actually performing, right? So here actually you see like the total means like the entire organization across the US. You're roughly seeing like some 1.8 to kind of 2% kind of GDP growth. However, if you reduce the tech spending, this basically means like whatever like the tech giants are actually investing from a products and platform perspective and their own infrastructure spend, the capital spend, everything. If you exclude that, that means like you are below even 1%. That means like a lot of GDP growth is happening because of the more capital investment coming into bringing up AI infra and others. And it's not effectively like the other large enterprises are actually bringing in a lot of impact to the GDP. So this again corroborates with like the previous findings. A lot of ROI and other stuff is probably seen by the tech giants because of their services and platform solutions as well as like their capital investment. But the rest of the world is not seeing like as much impact as them. So let's move ahead. We'll go to the poll two.
Yes, so we'll have this poll again for a minute, and all of the attendees are requested to vote. So we are left with a few more seconds. You all are allowed to vote. All those who are left, please be quick. Also, we're also having questions, taking the questions from your side. So all of those who have any doubts, you want to share any queries, so feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box. We'll be taking them up towards the end after the vote. So we have last 10 seconds, you can vote, and then we'll be closing the poll. So we are here with the results. Jay, you can go through.
Okay, yeah. So no impact is 12.5%, minor impact is 22.5%, moderate is 25%, and significant is 25%, and not applicable. So here actually we see a little different perspective. I see like more companies, 25 add up like moderate impact and significant impact. That effectively means like 50%. That's pretty high. It's not matching with like some of those reports. Maybe some of you may be doing much better than these findings, whatever actually we have seen. That's what actually we can conclude from that. So let's get going to the second part of the presentation. So we'll actually discuss a couple of stories and how actually whether actually we are able to get ROI or not. So far, actually, I mean, prior to the world of answer engines, actually, we have been seeing like the search engines, right? I mean, Google search and Bing search and others were there. And you actually ask a query and actually you kind of get a result. And it is on us to basically go through these different the links and then understand whether actually we have got an answer and then whether it is relevant, not relevant, other stuff. So there is a process actually which is involved in the previous world, right? In the new world, when actually we look at it, like I mean, these are like answer engines. You ask a question and things like I mean, platforms like either Google AI mode or the Copilots or the Perplexities of the world, they're actually able to give us a result. So we have been from a search engine, actually we moved to an answer engine, and then we are able to get results much faster, right? But if an organization kind of rolls out, let's say, gives them a let's say an enterprise version of let's say Copilot or any of these answer engines, will it actually result in a business impact? Will you be able to really quantify that? To quantify, like you really need to have a baseline in terms of this is what I do 100 searches per day, and I used to spend so much of time to basically process that, and then actually now I am able to do it in X hours, right, which is less than the earlier number of hours. And because of that, I'm able to save so much. And I'm doing like some other work. So basically, like it's very, very difficult to define a process for an individual when actually you give an answer engine to them, right? So this is like one of the reasons why, in spite of an organization maybe investing in Copilot, they are not able to kind of get the expected results. An organization, let's say, if they invest let's say $20 per month or something, that's going to be significant. If there are going to be 100,000 people in the company, right, monthly, yearly, it's going to be a significant cost. But is it actually resulting in a real ROI for them? That is like very, very difficult to measure at this point in time. What cannot be measured, it's going to be very, very difficult to understand the ROI. That's one story around that, what actually we are seeing currently in the market. The second is like the earlier world of like creating all these dashboards, Power BI, Tableaus of the world. And then actually we are currently moving to what we call as the AI for BI. Across, let's say you take Microsoft Fabric or Databricks or Snowflake, any platform is coming up with like these kind of solutions. You can ask a question and it is able to give an answer, right? It's able to fire some natural language query and then it gets converted into a SQL and actually you are able to get the result. So in this scenario as well, like it's very difficult. How would we kind of see the impact, right? Or what could drive the impact? It depends on like how much of usage is actually happening, how much duration actually they are actually spending on this particular tool. What is the frequency? What's the kind of decisions actually they are taking? And with those decisions, like what are those metrics actually they are actually able to move, right? I mean, the issues resolved or orders placed or improvement in CSAT. You really have like a lot of business metrics, and is it really moving that by moving from a dashboard world to an AI for a BI world? There's a new investment, new money has been invested by the company. Whether it actually really resulted in a benefit or not, it's going to be like doubtful, right? Because as I said earlier, unless you have a kind of proper baseline in terms of this is where actually I stand, and I actually invested in this particular tool, and I am actually able to get things faster. My decisions are faster now, and I was able to save so much because of those decisions. It is like very, very difficult to kind of establish that whole traceability and then link it back to this particular investment. That is another reason like why people are able to not seeing that ROI at this point in time. So again, there is a process kind of a lacuna at this point in time which needs to be addressed. So let's look at like another interesting use case here. This is basically a deep research and recommendation acquisition of let's say a banking customer, right? These are like a multi-agent kind of a workflow actually we are seeing, and let's assume that a bank wants to kind of sell some of its let's say SME loan product, right, to the different SME companies, small medium enterprise companies, right? So in this particular case, I mean, you can see like close to around 5, 6 agents are actually working to that provide a recommendation. So there is it actually looks at like what are those companies which are actually listed in the stock exchange and identifies like those companies' profile, the leadership, what kind of products actually there in the market, does an industry analysis, does market potential analysis. It looks at their financial balance sheet and other stuff, what kind of metrics, financial metrics in terms of P&L, their gross profit, operating profit, net profit, EBITDA, EPS, multiple metrics actually, they actually look at it and then understand the financial health of that particular company. They also look at, like, another agent looks at like the social presence in terms of the news and their overall sentiment and other stuff, market commentary and everything. That agent does that. And finally, like, all this information actually sent to a risk profiling agent, which looks at all these dimensions. A certain weightage is actually given to each of these parameters, and actually it gives a final risk profile. And that is finally sent to a loan eligibility checker agent, and it actually looks at like the overall profile of the company, and then it looks at the financial strength, any of the scores like CIBIL and other stuff. Actually it gets any historic things like check bonds and other stuff. Actually it looks at and then see like, hey, this is the way actually among 100 prospects, this is what I actually recommend, which is like the recommender agent does that particular stuff. So it provides an eligibility score, how much of loan can be provided, and other stuff, right? So this is like a typical marketing kind of a process, right? Which actually we are looking at. If you look at it like in this particular use case, it's a low risk use case and very high impact, because in the event you are able to convert some customer, that's going to be a real impact. And it is going to save a lot of cost, because otherwise an analyst would actually need to do all this stuff and get that output, right, which is not the case here. And a multi-agent is able to work together and get this particular output. And in the event, like, even if there is a recommendation which is not, let's say, 100% correct, it is perfectly fine, because there is a process post this. After that, there is a human process where the documents will get physically verified and stuff. So some errors are also fine. It can be overlooked. This use case is like something like perfect for automation, because even though there could be some errors, even though some error could propagate to this particular process, but still it is a good use case when it comes to agentic implementation. And you can really see the results, because if there is a conversion, you can actually see, hey, this particular prospect actually be converted into a client, and the agentic actually helped in that particular process. So look at another process. This is like an automated trade promotion claim settlement process. Here again, actually, the process is like the CPGs companies would launch a lot of promotion, and the retailers and e-commerce partners would actually sell them through their platforms. And finally, like, there is a reconciliation which is actually required in terms of how much they sold and how much of promotion credit actually has to be given to them, right? So in this particular case, it is very important, like at every stage in the agentic flow, you need to evaluate multiple documents, right? In terms of the invoices, and then you need to do an OCR, you need to see the numbers properly. And if there is any error in, even in, let's say, one invoice you actually process, then all this error actually gets propagated to the rest of the agents, be it like the promotion matching agent, the evidence validation agent, or the financial reconciliation agent, or the decisioning agent. So every stage in the process, even if, let's say, you assume, let's say, every agent is, let's say, 95% accurate and there is a 5% error rate, since there are actually 5 agents which are actually involved in this particular process, you see an overall accuracy is only 77.4%. The accuracy of this particular flow is only 77.4%. That effectively means, like, is this a right process from an agentic perspective? And is there a need for maybe not have a complete an agentic automation? Maybe a human in the loop would be actually required to make it like much more robust, right? So this is like a trade-off we need to make. How much of agency we need to give to the agent, and how much of, let's say, human involvement would be required. So choosing the right use case is very important, and whether there is a tolerance level for any of these errors is there or not. That's actually a very important criteria to look at, and that will actually define whether you will be able to get some ROI or not. So we looked at like 4 different scenarios. So how do we kind of look at like the benefits planning and realization, right? This is actually very important, because our topic is all about like the GenAI is everywhere, and it's not in the P&L, right? So we need to make sure it is there in the P&L. That's important. So when we actually do any project when it comes to AI and GenAI, and most of the technology teams are not even looking at in terms of the ROI. That's probably left to the business stakeholders. But that should not be the case. Every stakeholder within that particular project should come together, and they should actually define right in the beginning in terms of defining that what is the full potential value you can get out of this particular solution, right? An AI-led solution. So you should actually define that objective, and then there should be a very, very clear a kind of statement made in the sense that reducing like promotion claim cycle by 40% and save, let's say, $5 million from this particular process, right? A clear articulation should be there right in the beginning, and there should be like owners assigned, business owners or IT or whoever is actually involved. There should be very clear, and there should be a benefits register which is actually required to be created right in the beginning. We don't do that. We create a project plan, but we never create a plan for benefits. That's something which we need to actually look at it. Now, when we actually build a solution, we always look at from a technology solution, again, from a functional point of view, from a non-functional, maybe scalability, performance, and other point of view. Again, what we forget is like, how do we track if a project gets delivered? How do we track the benefits? How are we going to track some of these things like maybe a click-through rate or maybe a cart addition or maybe an upsell or a cross-sell or any of those stuff? Do we have systems in place to kind of get those information back to the maybe some dashboard or something actually we build, and then there is an adoption readiness scorecard, other stuff, whether the users are actually ready to adopt this particular solution to be implemented in this particular regular process, and if they're able to do that, how are they actually doing it, what metrics is going to change, how can we link it back to our benefits register. That's the most important thing. We need to have a, just like how we have a, let's say, a Grafana dashboard, other stuff, a similar kind of dashboard we need to prepare when it comes to a benefits point of view. And post implementation, usually like project gets completed and the team is dismantled, technical team is gone, and business stakeholders drive that, and there is no way actually they can actually track it, right? So post implementation is also very, very important. And whatever the platform actually we build to track the benefits, we need to look at it from a 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months perspective. Look at like how these KPIs are actually moving. Are they really helping? How do they actually compare with respect to the cost and all those stuff? So that needs to be done. And for all these things, you need like whatever is there in the bottom of the slide. All those departments, the finance, the legal, the business, the technology team, the change management team, everyone needs to kind of come together to basically make it success. So you need to have a framework well defined, and that framework should actually drive all this adoption when it comes to benefits management. And to kind of conclude, this is like what actually we need to do from a process perspective. We need to look at like what are those use cases actually we need to prioritize, and how do we kind of reimagine some of these business processes and other stuff, and how do we kind of select which are the right process for agentic automation. That's actually very important. Look at like the ones where actually, even though accuracy is not accuracy may be a problem, but you can live with it, so you can choose such kind of use cases because the chances of success are very high. At the same time, look at those process like which are in, let's say, customer service and IT and marketing and operations, wherein like you need not have 100% accuracy. I mean, error rate is fine. You're not doing some medical stuff or anything, right? So pick up use cases very carefully, and wherein there is a baseline metrics available, and actually you can track that. And using the benefits register, you can actually see how things are actually moving and get it done. When it comes to like expectation of high accuracy, always strike the right balance in terms of having a human in the loop, because the error propagates and it is multiplicative in nature, and we need to address that. That means like we need to have the human in the loop. Do not look for a 100% autonomous solution. May not be right at this point of technology maturity. Data is actually very key. We need to have the right data foundation and technology foundation. If data is not ready, let's not embark on this particular journey of agentic AI and GenAI and other stuff. It is going to be disastrous. Architecture are very important. Choosing the right framework, be it open source or be it like any of the from the cloud providers. Even though you might to get into any of those platform, at the same time you need to make sure like you are pretty good on context engineering, bringing like quality engineering practices, bringing observability practices, adaptive learning, as well as like the FinOps part, which actually is all about tracking the cost as well as like the benefit. And trust is very important. We saw in the market research as well. We need to bring in the trust into what actually we are doing, be it from a reliability point of view, safety, security, privacy, and all those stuff is actually very important. So make sure we build that into the system. organizational structure, very important. Like for example, if an agent is going to be brought into the business process, what is going to happen to the human being who was actually managing that process earlier? How do we kind of mix it up and then redefine, let's say, the job description of the individual who is going to have an agent working along with that particular person, right? So that's very important. Unless you kind of not do that, then it is going to be very, very difficult in terms of measuring the ROI, because the agent is there, the human being is there, and they continue to do things together. And if you don't see like better throughput or any of those success metrics very clearly defined from baseline perspective as well as like an ongoing tracking perspective, you are not going to see the ROI. Very important to manage that. And finally, like managing the value realization is very important. So you need to track it right before the project, through the project, as well as like after the project. That itself should be treated as a project. If we do that pretty good, then we won't be seeing like this 5% kind of numbers where people are seeing returns and 95% not seeing returns. So with that, I conclude, and I'll take questions now, Kushi.
Yes, absolutely, Jay. Amazing insights, I have to say. A big thank you for sharing all these forward-looking perspectives on how generative AI is actually reshaping industries and why its impact on the P&L is still remains a critical conversation. You really took us through understanding the gap between experimentation and also the enterprise scale outcomes, with exploring these strategies for responsible and ROI-driven adoption. So the session has really given us plenty to think about, and not just these valuable insights shared, but also continuing the dialogue on how we can turn GenAI's promise into measurable business impact. So now we have received some excellent questions from the audience. We'll take a few of them available in the question panel for your reference. So the first one is that how do you see the regulatory and ethical landscape evolving for GenAI in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, I think the way actually I see this whole regulation ethic is like do not wait for it. Okay, don't wait for like somebody is going to give some rules and because of that I'm going to act on something. It's important. Like I mean, we kind of define our own practices when it comes to our business. That is actually very important. What kind of use cases actually you are working on, and in those use cases look at the risk profile of those use cases, okay, because not everyone is working on something like very critical. It harms the life of people and other stuff, right? If you're doing something in the marketing or sales or something you are doing in the supply chain, other stuff, maybe a lot of those rules may not be very relevant for you. So one way of looking at is like look at like those different guidelines being published by the different kind of geographies, the US, EU, and others, and have a framework created for yourself, and then make sure like you risk profile your use cases and what are the steps actually you need to make sure across those dimensions of data as well as like model, and then execute it. We need not be like too much worried on some of those macro and other stuff which is actually going to change, because you can't predict those things. So make sure like within your business you are actually operating ethically. You're not making undue advantage of any of the stakeholders. Those things are actually very important. If you're true to that, I don't think we really need to worry about those things. It will come, and then we can easily be able to adopt, because if you have set up a culture for adopting these things, it becomes pretty easy.
Right, Jay. So moving forward, I would also like to mention that we'll try to cover all the questions. You can answer accordingly. So the next question is from Mandeep, that how can technical teams align with business leaders to ensure their Gen AI work translates into measurable outcomes?
Yeah, I think I kind of talked about it and I spoke about the benefit realization. So it is important, like they are involved right through the process, right when it comes to the before the project, defining that whole statement, right, in terms of which use case or which process actually you want to change, what's the kind of numbers you are going to see down the line, and what kind of support actually we need from the business, and what kind of adoption or mechanism actually we have from a change management perspective, right? So it's not like they versus us, it's like together as a team, how can actually we take ownership of that and then drive it. That's actually going to be the most important thing. So treat this whole ROI as a project, just like a technical project. That's actually very important. If you're able to manage with that particular rigor, uh, it's going to be like, I mean, very difficult. If you do it pretty well, then I don't think there is a challenge when it comes to ROI. Doesn't matter whether it is 2x or 3x, but you will definitely get a multiple. That's important.
Yes, Jay, absolutely. So, with the next question, this is from Mr. Divyansh, that from your experience, what are the biggest cultural or organizational barriers to moving Gen AI from pilot projects to enterprise-wide adoption?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question because every enterprise has a graveyard of POCs. That's what actually we have seen so far, right? And the reason for that is like people are pretty much risk averse when it comes to this particular technology at this point in time, and they want to do proof of concepts. But proof of concepts is never going to give us the ROI, right? Because it's a proof. That's all. You're able to try out a technology in a particular use case, and it's kind of done in a very offline way and other stuff, right? So this is the reason, like taking up an end-to-end use case and reimagining that particular business process, as well as like making that user the center of that particular change is very important. So through, let's say, design thinking, and through, let's say, early involvement of the stakeholders right from the beginning, and continuous involvement of them throughout the phase is actually very important. So one, educating the people and then making them part of it is like very important, and that should actually become the culture, right, of that particular organization. And training is very important, and at the same time, like creating the impact in one or two departments, and then showing that, championing that, all those stuff actually becomes very very important. And another important thing is like we need to make sure like we as technologies actually bring in the trust into whatever actually we do. For example, set the right expectation. uh, don't give unreasonable expectation when it comes to, let's say, with this agentic AI you will get everything automated under the sun. Don't be unreasonable, be very realistic. How much of automation can be done through agents, how much of human involvement would be required, and help them through that particular process. That's actually very important. And yeah, that's the way I would just put it.
Right, and absolutely, these putting it into this amazing adoption, that how we can actually move forward with the Gen AI is absolutely encourageable. So, with the next question, that is from Parth, it is that what metrics or KPIs should companies track to measure Gen AI's true business impact? What do you have to say about that?
I think like the end of the day, it should result in the P&L, right, which is like the larger metrics for the organization. And at let's say a country level or a world level, right, we are looking at GDP as a number, right? So end of the day, we should be able to translate from that macro metric to something which is actually relevant for each and every use case. So right in the beginning, for example, if it is related to, let's say, something in the sales, right, sales is all about revenue. That means like you need to work backwards. If it is an e-commerce, whether actually you are able to make more people actually come to your platform, more people to do the click-through rate, more people to add items to the cart, more kind of average, the revenue is higher, right? Order value is higher in each of those carts. There is less cart abandonment, right, in the e-commerce world. I'm making like use case simple so that everybody understands, right? So you need to make sure like each of these metrics, right, the sub metrics or the low level metrics, actually we are able to track, and we are able to improve on each of these things, and that finally results in, let's say, conversion, right, and the revenue improvement. That's actually very very important. So that's a way to basically map it. They go to the lowest level metrics actually, which is you can measure and try to improve on that. That actually finally translate to the micrometrics. That's the only way to do it. And be very particular in defining that right in the beginning, take it through the entire process while execution, have that benefit register or the dashboard or everything. You can actually track it on an ongoing basis. Don't abandon it at the end of the project, because such kind of projects never give results.
Yes, that's the basic way that companies should actually go and track the Gen AI's business impact and moving forward with this advancements further. All right. So with the next one, we'll just take the last two questions, Jay. So this is that from Vipul, that how can GenAI be used in self-serve analytics?
I think when it comes to self-service analytics, I mean, you see a lot of this A for BA and other kind of technologies, right? I mean, all these are able to kind of help you uh, either if you are let's say if you are a little bit technical, actually you should be able to do some what we call as a wipe coding and get things done for yourself. But otherwise, like there are platforms wherein actually you can ask questions and get the answers, and those platforms are also improving. You are able to, you can not only get the insights, but they're also kind of adding new things like anomaly detection, causal analysis, and all those stuff. So it's a continuous way actually it gets evolved. So that's where I would put it.
Yes. So with this, we move towards the last question, which is from Nandaraju, that companies are investing heavily in generative AI, both in infrastructure and ongoing maintenance, as compared to the traditional program management. So in your view, when can they realistically expect to see the returns on these investments?
Yeah, I think, see, it all depends on whether the strategy of that particular company, right? I mean, whether they want to do a lot of POCs or they want it to be like very selective in terms of doing something end to end. It's a strategic decision each of them need to take. And as I said earlier as well, identify those business process where actually you can do an end to end process automation. That is very important. Do not look at like giving a co-pilot to some individual and then it suddenly results in a big ROI. So look at like end-to-end process, get in agents, but at the same time have the human involvement, and then you should be able to redefine the roles and responsibilities of the individual along with the agent. Unless you kind of do all this stuff and track the whole benefit stuff across the life cycle, it is very unlikely people will get the results. So there is a not only a technology maturity and other stuff which is actually required, which is probably like tech giants are doing, and you can do your part. But there is a whole lot of thing to be done from a process perspective, which is internal to the organization. So those things are prerequisite to start seeing the benefits.
Yes, absolutely, Jay. So, a lot of questions, but all of them answered. So, with that, we wrap up this highly insightful session on Gen AI is everywhere except the PNL. Thank you once again, Jay, for such an empowering and thought provoking session. It was really an absolute pleasure hosting you and hearing your expertise. A heartfelt thanks as well to all our wonderful participants for your engagement and thoughtful questions, which made today's session a great success. So this session has been recorded and the recording will soon be available on techgig.com. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jay, for joining. And we look forward to seeing all you again in our upcoming sessions.
Thank you, Kushi, and thank you everyone for joining. And hope it was helpful for everyone. And thank you for questions. It also helps me to learn and explore more. Thank you.
Yes, it was really great having you, Jay, hosting you for this webinar, because definitely we have received some amazing and very forward-looking perspectives from your personal expertise, which definitely everyone will be enlightened after hearing from you. So thanks
Thank
a lot.
you. Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot for joining. Thanks a lot, everyone.